Well, grade 9, welcome to section 8.3, which is just a continuation of all the stuff that we've been doing in chapter 8. And everything is based on equations. And today is going to be no different. We are simply going to add another level to the equations that we are able to solve. And so to help us get an idea of where we're going to be going, there's a problem up on the board with regards to temperature. And the question is, how do you calculate average temperature if the high is 23 and the low is 13? How do you find the average? And I think you could brainstorm that amongst yourselves and come up with the same answer that I would. To find average, you add together, divide by how many there are. So you get 36 divided by 2 is 18 degrees Celsius. What if the question was changed a little bit and you were told the low is 10 and the average is 15? What was the high temperature? And I'd be curious if any of you know the answer. And if you do, just go ahead and even shout it out now. But the bigger question is, how did you get it? And can you explain how you got it? And can we use that to help us solve more complicated questions? Because we're going to get to here, not to here, sorry, to here, and things are going to look a little more, challenging. So let's take a look at another situation where I think you might already know the answer. All right, if the total is 54 cents, and there's two groups of something plus 25, do you know what the answer is? And again, I think some of you can think about that in your head, and you'll be like, I think I know the answer. And there's a logical progression there. I'm going to represent it with figures. All right, that plus 25, and I have it twice. There's two groups of that plus 25, and it equals 54 cents here. So we have that plus that. Okay. So how are we going to deal with that? Well, sometimes when I've done this in the past, I've had kids rearrange things a little bit. And they put that like that, and then they put that like that, and kind of erase this other plus sign. And then that becomes something pretty familiar to us from what we did last time. And if you think of the process we went through then, we said, well, let's take away this 50 cents from this side, and whatever we take away from one side, we take away, and we all of a sudden have an expression that is pretty easy to answer. If two things add to being 4 cents, and they're the same, how much is each part? And the answer is 2 cents. That's pretty easy. We can handle that. So what I'd like for you to do now, and I'm not sure how we can do it, you can't really come up and just start moving things around because you're not in the notebook software. But how do we represent three groups of x plus 10 equaling 36? Could you even just on your paper stop this video and draw that out? And from that, does that help you to get an answer, or does it not help you to get an answer? So go ahead, try and draw that out. Three groups of x plus 10 is 36. Does that help you get the answer? Because that's one way you can deal with this. So hopefully by now you've stopped and you've taken that question, and your teacher has even asked you about getting the answer, or who got the answer, and how did you get the answer. And I'd be curious to talk to you the next time I see you and see how you did. And how does that help us do a question like this, where there's two groups of E take away 0.6 equals 4.2. So maybe one way that you would do it, and there's a couple ways that I can think of you can do it here, is to say, well, if there's two groups of them, that means I have an E take away 0.6, and then I have another E take away 0.6, and that equals 4.2. And then maybe you gather the terms together that are alike, and you rewrote it as being, well, there's two E's there, and then I have minus 1.2 equals 4.2. So there's my yellow, and there's my blue. And now we're at a point, this is section 8.2 now. How do we find the value of E? We do our opposite operations. I'm going to add 1.2 to both sides. And you get 2E equals 5.4. And then we would divide both sides by 2 and get that E is 2.7. That's one way you could do that. Now, I don't know if you want to write it down or not. There's another way you could also do it that some of you maybe thought of as you did the questions, or did the first questions that I asked you, and I'm going to again color code it here, blue and yellow. If two groups of E take away 0.6 equals 4.2, or in other words, 2 times that is 4.2, then each group in itself has to be half of 4.2, which is 2.1. And then from there, you would simply add 0.6 to both sides, and you would get that E is 2.7. Same answer, a little bit different work, maybe a little bit less work. No problem. What about question 2, though? What number plus 2 divided by 3 is minus 5/2? Anyone know that off the top of their head? I don't know that answer. And even comparing the way we did this, the other question where we could split up the E minus 0.6 into 2 groups, how do I do it here when it's divided by 3? So we're going to, instead of trying to split it up into thirds, which becomes very difficult, let's do opposite operations. And I'm going to, just to help us a little bit, I'm going to put just a bracket around there. And I'm going to ask, what's happening to that yellow part right there? What's happening to it? And you can all say it's being divided by 3. Well, what's the opposite of dividing by 3? Timesing by 3. In fact, we're going to times by 3, and just to remind ourselves how we multiply fractions by 3 over 1 on both sides. Now what happens is, on the left-hand side, we did that for a purpose, and that was that 3 divided by 3 is 1, so you're only left with the yellow part. And on the right-hand side, numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, we end up with a fraction. And now we're in a place where we can manage this question. We are now going to do opposite operations again. Subtract 2 from both sides, which is 2 over 1. And you'll get C equals. Now again, some of you can do this in your heads, this negative 15 over 2 minus 2 over 1. Some of you will need to show the work and do the work of getting a common denominator, and whichever works for you is fine with me. Minus 15 minus 4 over 2 is minus 19 over 2. Please leave it as an improper fraction. Don't change it to a mixed. Something we haven't talked about for a while is just a reminder, you can always check your work. You don't even need the back of the book when it comes to the test. Our original question, if I just erase all the junk around it, was what number plus 2 is minus 3, is negative 5 over 2 when you divide it by 3. So if I take my C value and I add 2 to it, and then I divide it by 3, do I get minus 5/2? And some of you might even want to use your calculator to check that. That would be reasonable to me. Well, minus 19 divided by 2, well, that's minus 9.5 plus 2 is 3, which is minus 7.5 over 3. The question is that minus 5 over 2? Change it to a fraction now over 30, then divide that by 5, then divide that by 3, and you're home free. You know what's right. So that's something you might want to practice, because when you get to your test, it's really nice that you can check your work and then know if you're right. You'll also run into some problems in your assignment, pardon me, word problems, not just problems in general. And the big picture here is, again, can you get the expression? And I know that that's the challenge that we all face. If you're stuck on that, make sure you ask about it and let your teacher help you work your way to get an expression that makes sense. I'm not sure how far you're going to get today. How do you like my polar bear assignment here? There's regular. You might want to challenge yourself with that assignment. It's up to you. Your teacher will tell you at the end of class what is expected of you by next class. Just a reminder that you're going to work as you always do. You're going to be on task. You're going to work together if necessary. Or if you desire to do that, you're going to ask questions when you have questions. And I look forward to hearing how it went next time we're in class together. Otherwise, we're done. That is section 8.3.